folks, Michael here again with Plant It All, and this growing season the good folks at Growee decided they were going to sponsor my channel again because they liked some of the experimentation and just showing off the DIY approach to gardening that I do. So for this season I'm going to be focusing on the greenhouse that you all saw me starting to put up at the end of last growing season. After the assembly, we ran into one hurdle already. The very peak of the greenhouse is supposed to be 7 feet. I'm 6 feet 4 inches, and it was definitely not 7 feet. So we made some little improvements right out of the gate. First off, we started by adding this bottom area here. It's 2 feet 4 inches tall, and that just lifted the entire greenhouse up. And because we lifted the greenhouse up, we needed to put proper doors on it as well. These doors aren't anything fancy. They're just pressure-treated lumber, some very simple supports and some joinery, and then greenhouse plastic. This actually was, even though a relatively small thing to do, a huge improvement because it gave substantial headroom both for me and for whatever I'm growing in here. Now, I'm pretty new to greenhouse use. This is season 1.5. I mean, I put this up late last growing season, so I really don't know how this is going to go. I hope it goes well, but there's a lot of new things to me, like air circulation, temperature control, just the fact that it's a big closed up thing that even in my climate, so my growing zone, I'm in the 6B hardness zone, maybe it's going to get too hot in there. Maybe I'm not going to be able to keep it hot enough. Maybe it's going to fluctuate too much. So this is going to be the cornerstone of the next few videos. The folks at Growee really enjoyed the fact that I was willing to put out some risks there and just see what I can do. And you may remember Bruce, the tomato plant, from one of the very first sets of videos I made. He ended up being huge, to the point where I had to cut him down. I couldn't let him keep growing. He was literally out of control. In the greenhouse here, we're going to see how it goes. So half of the greenhouse is going to be recirculating deep water culture, and the other half of the greenhouse is going to be soil. Everything's going to be fed by the exact same nutrient system, mixed by the same Growee system. So as close as I can get it, these are going to be identical environments for the plants to grow. And I'm hoping that we can see some really great contrast and draw some conclusions. Either way, it's going to be fun. And let's get in there, and I'm going to start showing you the assembly to make all of this happen. Hi folks, we're in the greenhouse. It's a little brisk out. Definitely not growing season yet, but I'm getting some things going that I wanted to share with you. So you can see, let's get it, yeah. There's actually a lot going on here. So over the winter, I built a table out of pallets over here, and I'm going to be doing dirt on this side and hydro on this side. And this should be interesting. I want to basically see which one I can push a bit further. Maybe it's less work, more product. We're just going to see how it goes this growing season. But I wanted to show you how I'm setting things up for the hydro side. So I've got a lot laid out here already. You can hear the diesel heater going in back there. We do need to bring up the temperature just a little bit. And this is basically an expansion of the same design I use in my grow tents. So what's happening here, we've got a port down there that's going to handle 3-inch PVC. We have the inlet here, so that'll be our little waterfall coming in. And each of these pots is connected through threaded PVC. So we're going to be using thread dope in there to make sure these are good seals. Remember, the Teflon tape, not the best idea with plastic threads. It can fatigue them. Anyhow, valves here and then a T, and this is just going to run all the way down to the end where I've got a 45-gallon reservoir there, and then the Growee will be set up, I'm thinking, somewhere across there. We'll see. This is going to kind of need to evolve as it goes. But I think this will be pretty great. So coming on down here, the pump is going to be coming out. I got this little spur fitting here. So it's going to be inside the reservoir, pumping up flexible pipe into here. Then hard PVC as we come all the way across. And the reason for each of these valves is so I can control the flow. So no valves would mean this pot would get a lot of water, this one a little bit less, and probably nothing down there in pot number 7. So what we're going to do is, with water flowing once it's all assembled, I'm going to be tweaking the valves so we get as equal flow as possible. So I'll do a video of that just so you can get a feel of where I'm thinking and, well, how well it works. I am shooting from the hip on this one. Then, these big openings. So, I'm going to be working with 3-inch PVC. And I don't know if you've ever tried to price out really big bulkheads for a hole that big. They cost about $180 to $200. So, what I have done, and this is not the final product, but I have made the very first planted all 3-inch PVC bulkhead and 3D printed it. This is a prototype, but the 2 pieces thread together works like a regular bulkhead. And then we've got some neoprene gasket material. So what will be going on here is gasket material will go on the outside, trimmed flush, all this nice and cleaned up. Then the red bit here, that's got the footing to accept the 3-inch PVC, that will go in there. Then on the inside, that's where the green bit comes in. That's the nut. The threads, lots of pipe dope, just like the other pieces, and then sandwiched on the outside. Then underneath all of that, so that's why I built the table out of these actually pretty decent quality pallets I was able to get a hold of. They'll be plumbed into these and then returned back to the reservoir. The only difference is down here. So for the very last pot, I just have an elbow with a clean out. And the reason for the clean out here is so in between seasons, I can just thread this out, stick a hose in, and just blast the whole thing right down nice and clean, and then clean up the reservoir. And that's it. So let's take a look at one of these pots, and I'll drill the last set of holes. Okay, so this is more or less everything at play. Drill, cutting holes. 2 different bits for getting the hole for these little puppies done. One is a Forstner bit. So you could use probably just about any bit you want. I like Forstners an awful lot because it's got this nice little pilot tip here, and then it cuts from the edges and scrapes in the field. If you were to cut these holes this big with a spade bit, the one that kind of looks like a shovel, it will work, but because it's basically just a point there, and then this little bit like the Forstner has in the middle, it can tear away at the plastic. This just kind of eats its way through on the edges, and you get a much cleaner hole, in my opinion. Now, this is exactly the size we need, which means there's pretty much no play in the hole. Step bits, a little pyramid here. I'm just going to widen the hole ever so slightly with this one, so the bulkhead slides in nice and easy. Now when it comes to that big old honking hole down there, we need a big old honking bit. This is a 4.5-inch hole saw. These can get very expensive. This is a dirt cheap one I picked up off Amazon. I'm cutting through thin wall plastic. I just need that consistent circle. So this is good. All right. Now, taking a look at the bucket, here's one of my buckets from another project I'm just going to be recycling. I have popped off the handles, so in these nice Craftsman ones, just give it a push, and they come right off, and you can throw this out or, I don't know, use it for something else. All right, so handles gone. Orientation, I really almost screwed this up. They're squares. So we got to be a little bit careful. For the sake of how everything lines up, I want the clips for my lids to be here, front to back, not side to side. It works out a little bit better in my opinion too, because if you look at this, on the side where the handle was, nice big flats here to drill that hole into. There's a lot less real estate on the side where the clip is for the lid. So just to make space work, and use as little PVC as possible, this is kind of how the configuration is going to look. So thread it in through the bulkhead, thread it up to the valve, and then once I have all these set and resting right on the table surface here, that's when I'll cut and glue the PVC to each one. That way I don't really have to sweat everything being really, really perfect in terms of how it's lined up. I've got a little bit of play, makes my life easier. All right, so let's do some cutting. You're gonna need a tape measure because you do want these relatively close. Like if you're way off one way or another, it's gonna make your glue up between sections much harder. In this case, I just found a convenient landmark. So that is 3 inches from the very edge to the center of where this hole is. Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you do want to be as close as you can. So let's get that bit on. And just, okay, so same here. All right, so it's going to be this. So let's bring it up on its side. And we said 3 inches from the edge. Which basically, if you look here, lines you up with this little dot. That's pretty much how I made that decision. So, come up to the top, see that little wedge there? I'm just going to line up the center, get as centered as I can in that main field there. Yep. And let's cut. There you go. Nice and clean. Now, the Forstner bits, they can be a little hard to find locally. Typically, you don't find them at your big box stores. Some smaller hardware stores will have them. You can go to a craft wood store and definitely get them, but they're going to be expensive. This is another good Amazon find. You don't, like I would never do any of my woodworking with this bit. It's just going to dull way too fast. But we're cutting plastic. We just need a precise hole. This is good enough. Save yourself the money. All right, let's change over to that step bit. Got that up over here. Now be careful when you tighten these down. That whole thing just wants to eat your hand. So don't do the spin it around with the trigger thing. A lot of times folks will slip and they get up there. Bad news. All right, we're just going to widen it a little. Okay, usually only takes a couple turns like that because these step bits will go through plastic really, really fast. And yep, not bad. Nice and loose. And the reason I need this loose is because all of this needs to be tightened down. So if you look at this one here, give it a little flip over. So once this is glued up, then this can't turn. Each of these pieces have to be threaded in. So you kind of have to think a little bit backwards about it. We're going to get everything lined up. We're going to glue all these segments. And then once all of this is set, the way the final attachment will happen is the bulkhead will go in and will actually turn the back of the bulkhead to tighten here to get it all together. This last bit here does not have to be watertight, which is really, really convenient. But everything leading up to it does, including, let me just back this out, this last threading, not the nut, but the last threading between the bulkhead and this piece. So this joint here does have to be watertight. So again, just like everything else, pipe dope, but then as it comes to assembling it, we're going to be turning here from the thread side. Now, a pretty reasonable question would be, well, this does have a nut on the other face. Why don't you just do it this way? And this is a personal preference thing. This absolutely would work. Look. Threads on just fine, and then if you had the nut here, you tighten it up and it holds really good. I like having this little extra extension here because then if something's a little bit off and this is all the clearance you have, water could dribble over the edge and then make it out that hole. Probably not, but this way I can basically ensure it, and this is really not that much more work versus doing this with a wrench. This I can do with my fingers. Okay, so hole 1 done. A really good way of making sure you don't cut that hole on the wrong face is just for a moment, put it down and make sure that is just like the other ones you did. So now we got to go down here, and what I found was the best way to do this is a little practical measurement. So here's my prototype bulkhead. That's how it's going to fit in there, and you could look at this and go, well, gee, look, there's all this space here. You could have it lower. I could, except then I'd have a hard time turning the nut on the inside. So you have to make sure that the corner of this nut is not going to hit the bottom of your bucket, which is right about where my fingernail is. Like it's just over that seam line you can see. So what I found, I'll grab my trusty tape measure here again, was, there we go, 4 1/16 inches was pretty much bang on for me. So I'm just going to use the edge of the tape measure here to put a little scuff in it, and that'll be the center point for this. Now, since everything is lining up lengthwise, I don't have to worry about it being perfectly centered this way. It's really just height from the bottom we got to be careful about. Okay, so let's measure it and take a peek. All right, so line it up there, and I lock the tape measure down and then just kind of push it across, and that little scuff mark's really all you need. Let's get that hole saw on here. Now, just like the other bit, this thing is very, very happy to eat your hand. So just be a little bit careful as you put it on, because if you spin it with the trigger to get it going there and then just hold on to the chuck, this thing goes wobbly. I mean, it's a saw. It just cuts circles. So, see here, get the point right on that line. Turn it this way for a little better view. So just line it right up there. And looking reasonably centered. That's about it. So now it's time to connect some plumbing. All right, so just for sake and convenience, we're just going to do one pot here, but the process is basically identical the whole way down. Here we go. So let's first get this bulkhead off. So I'm keeping the nut and everything right there, because the last step after all of this is plumbed is to tighten these suckers down. This is what we're focusing on. So here's the basic orientation. So we have a threaded coupler, threaded elbow, threaded valve, threaded coupler, and then a thread slip PVC. So what that means, if you haven't already figured it out, this bit's threaded right there. These are not. So these fittings will be chemically welded the way that you usually do with PVC, primer first, then the adhesive. All these other joints we're going to do with the pipe dope. And just for sake of convenience, I'm going to start in here. That's basically what you want. The thread's gently filled, and then just thread it in. For these pieces, I probably will not need to use a wrench. They should thread together very nicely, and honestly, anything more than like hand tight, you're probably damaging the threads. So, with that, little wipe. One joint down, and, well, a whole lot to go. All right, let's keep rolling. Okay, this is our first one where orientation matters. I want to have basically that kind of orientation. Not this, not that, definitely not that. So just thread it in, and as you're getting tighter and you see the thread dope kind of balling up there, just pay attention to how tight you're making it, because if you back it out, it can cause leaks and little issues. So that's fairly tight. I'm almost 100% sure I can do one more turn without really straining stuff. Let's get one more in there. And I'm kind of spotting this in, but another great trick you can do is actually lay it on a table. And you see how it's slightly cockeyed there. Let's give it a little push. And then you can feel that it's flat because it's not rocking around any longer. And there you go. Looks pretty good. Tidied up. On to the next one. Okay, for this connection here, since this potentially has a lot of leverage to it, whereas this one not so much, I'm going to attach this to the elbow, and then the elbow to the rest of the system. Okay, so this is now another one where orientation matters. So before you really get too far on these threads, just take a look and remind yourself, okay, this needs to be going there, but when it's tight. There we are, it's tightening up a little bit. Pretty darn good. All right, now here to the bulkhead fitting. We're going to thread it on here, get it into place, lay it down, and give it a twist. Not too tough. But this is the last place where orientation really does matter an awful lot. So take your time with it. Here we go. That nut's getting a little in the way here. Yeah, that's looking good. Orientation's good, it's nice and flat. And I'm not making this super tight, just lightly thumb tight, just in case I need like a little flex in here as I'm lining up bit to bit. Maybe my pots are slightly off kilter from each other. Whatever it is, this joint here does not have to be watertight. This is just keeping it there. It's the one on the other side. It's this joint from the PVC into the bulkhead piece. That's the last one that has to be truly watertight. But there we go. All right. Got a little bit more work to go. See you in a bit. Okay, so let's take a look here. All the threading's done. Everybody's lined up pretty straight. And now it's time for PVC. So this time, unlike what I said earlier, I'm going to try a all-purpose one-step PVC cement. So the reason for this is I need it for when I attach my homemade bulkheads, because those are made out of ASA plastic, and to get ASA to bond with PVC for these nice big drain fittings here, this is what you have to use because it is rated, there you go, for multiple plastics. ASA is similar enough to ABS that I know this will work. So since this system here, basically it's almost a zero pressure system, you know, it's not like household water pressure by a long shot. I'm just going to give this a go. One less step. We'll see. Hopefully it's not a bad decision. But let me set down the camera here. All right. So I could measure these. Or what I could do is line them up and then snip. I think I'm going to line them up and snip for the sake of ease. So let's see here. It looks like we're going to be cutting right at the back of, the front of the O in code here. Got my handy PVC snips. If you are using these, when you go to buy them, make sure that they're big enough to accommodate the pipe you need. This is only rated up for 1.5 inches. Ham fetch is going to be no big deal for it whatsoever. Line up the blade and just cut away. Now, a long time ago, I got in the habit of dry fitting stuff first, because I once made a pretty big mistake. In this case, where you can see the flange, like you could reach in there and feel it, it matches up right with that nut. And I see the joint here, I can look at this and go, yes, I've got a good overlap into my joints, and I know I'm not going to overshoot and then block something. All right, time for a little cement. All right, let's get these cemented up. These multi-plastic cements tend to be a fair bit gooier, so just watch what you're doing. It's easy, super easy to make a ridiculous mess with these. The other stuff is messy too, don't get me wrong. But the kind of gooey, snot-like consistency of these always seems to be a bit more of a challenge. So, put it in. Give it a rotate, and rinse and repeat. And you get a little bit of time to fiddle it into place, and then step away. All right, well, that's one down. I got, so here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more sections to go. I'll see you in a minute. All right, there she is. The feed line is plumbed and attached. I glued on a little spur fitting here, and I've got to do a better job of shoving that hose onto there. But that can come later. The greenhouse now smells exactly like adhesive, so I'm calling it quits here for a little bit. That is stage, I don't know, let's call it stage 1. Obviously, there's a fair amount of work that happened here, but we're well on our way to having a recycling deep water culture system in the greenhouse here. So next time up, I'm going to be attaching the drains and that's going to require a little climbing under to make it all the way through, but that shouldn't be too bad. Anyhow, I will see you next time. I hope you're enjoying what you're doing, you're staying safe, and make sure that you plant it all.